Welcome to Mental Health Breakthroughs for Young Adults and Families. I'm your host, Carey Conley. This podcast is dedicated to helping young adults navigate through the challenges and learning curves that they're experiencing in every area of life. My personal episodes will be dedicated to helping you with getting clarity, direction, moving through adversity, and living with purpose and hope. I will also be bringing you amazing guests to discuss topics such as finances, career choices, relationships, grief, addiction, positive mindset, mental health, and more. I am on a mission to help you live a life that you love and have the confidence to go after your dreams. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Mental Health Breakthroughs for Young Adults and their Families. I am dedicating all of my podcasts this month, the month of September, because it is Suicide Prevention Month. And as you all know, if you are listeners of mine or you're new, you may not know that I have been touched by suicide twice in my life. I lost my husband 10 years ago. And then 3 years after that, I lost my 25-year-old son also to suicide. And at that time in my life, I was already a speaker out talking about the importance of having a vision, a very powerful, strong purpose and vision for your life. And what happened there with those traumas just kind of 10x my whole mission. So I started this podcast and have had some amazing guests on already. And I'm bringing back to you some guests this month that have been also touched by suicide and are making a really big impact and wanting to change the trajectory of this epidemic. So my guest today is a new friend of mine. We've met through a mutual friend that recommended I reach out to you. It's Leslie Weirich, you guys. Leslie, unfortunately, also lost a son 7 years ago to suicide and is also now changed her whole mission to be a suicide prevention advocate. She's founder of an organization called Leslie's Hope and is doing suicide prevention programs in schools. So big deal, Leslie. You are really out there making a big impact. And so I thank you for coming back here and talking to me about a topic that I've never talked about with anybody else on here, and that is the impact of loneliness. So I so excited to hear everything you've learned about that with regards to mental health. So thanks again. I'm glad that you're here.
Well, Carey, it's an honor to be back here with you, especially during the month of September, because as you know, suicide's impacted both of us. And I lost my 20-year-old son. It'll be 8 years on September 10th, which for your listeners who may not know that happens to be World Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day. Mm-hmm. So he took his life by sheer coincidence on that day. And then on the 2-year anniversary of his death, which would have been in 2018, the co-captain of his football team, he played college football at one of the last two remaining all-male colleges in the country, Wabash College, west of Indianapolis. And he also died by suicide. So both young men dying by suicide on, by sheer coincidence on World Suicide Prevention Awareness Day sort of catapulted us. Mm-hmm. And, we knew we were going to do something with our story. I had no idea 8 years later I would be speaking on military bases all over the United States, and honored to serve the military. I spoke to the Pentagon, been at West Point and all of that. But, it brings me to what we're going to talk about today with loneliness, because loneliness is, it's an epidemic, Carey. And I think that it goes unspoken about in so many ways because it can't be clinically diagnosed, but it has huge impacts on our mental and our physical health. So, I really want to kind of start out with you. Can we just kind of talk about what loneliness is, right? Yeah. We think about loneliness in terms of, being all alone, right? And it really actually has nothing to do with being alone. You can be in a concert hall with 500 to 1,000 people around you, Carey, and you can be incredibly lonely. Or you could be in a room with another person, just two of you, and be very, very connected. So loneliness actually has to do with social connection. Mm-hmm. And by social connection, I mean, Carey, we show up here, you and I, we're friends now. We have a bond that, we wish we didn't share. But, when we get connected, when we really share our story, when we start to talk about things, that's what breaks through that barrier of loneliness. Right. And, I just kind of want to break it down for you a little bit about how serious this is, because Vivek Murthy, who is our current Surgeon General, he's written several reports, and one came out earlier this year. And he talks about, how it not only impacts our physical health, but our mental health. But he says loneliness is actually as dangerous for your physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you
Wow.
think about what that does to your lungs, Carey, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking about something that's real. So when we break it down, and I love how he talks about the antidote, and we're going to talk about the antidote because the antidote is connection. It's
Yeah.
human connection. So, he talked about, what I love, he shares his own personal story. He said when he was a child, he was very lonely. And, that loneliness over time, shame starts to creep in because you're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have friends? Why aren't people around? So when that shame starts to creep in, you isolate even more. So I think, and we can talk about, all kinds of things that have led to this loneliness epidemic. But, I love that, like, I want to call him the leading doctor in our nation, but the Surgeon General has called it an epidemic. And he's traveled all over the country talking to people about it on college campuses, in corporations everywhere. So when we can break it down and really talk about what it is and what it isn't. So it's not about being alone, but it's lacking social connection, lacking that interaction with people where you have a real conversation, you share something. So that's really kind of, what I want to talk about here today, Carey.
Yeah. And I love that because, it's interesting. Every time I do a day of recording podcast, there's a theme that usually comes out. And in the last podcast, I was talking with a young man he goes into schools and does assemblies with the kids to teach them about their purpose. It's called Generation Y. And he was talking a lot about the fact that he sees the kids walk in very separate and very, kind of like in their own headspace. And in the assembly, the first thing they have to do is get the kids to get their walls to come down and connect with each other. Because without that, he can't get them to talk about their emotions and all the things. So, and I feel that. It used to be that, we've talked a lot about it. I know you're going to talk about this too, about how it's a really big thing with kids right now, but it's also really big with, and with my generation.
Yep. My generation.
I can feel that.
Yeah.
I can feel that. And I understand that. I need community as much as anybody else. And more so now. Because I live alone and my daughter's in another state. So it's a big thing. And I definitely feel it.
I get you, Carey. I actually wrote a post this morning. I had to just go and I'll just share it because it was on LinkedIn today. And I shared about how I went to get some blood work done at a lab here locally. And, when I got about halfway there, I realized I didn't have my phone. And I had time to turn around, but I thought, no, I'm just going to keep on going.
Yeah.
So I go into the lab and, you got the kiosk and you check in and everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and there's probably about 20 other people there. This is 8:00 this morning. So, everyone in there has a story. We're all there to get lab work done. There's something going on in our lives. But everybody, except for me, because I forgot it at home, everyone's heads are down. Their heads are down in their phones. And I thought, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn, I said, when was it? When did we lose the ability to look up? When did we lose the ability to make eye contact with a stranger that we're sitting across from in a waiting room and say, I see you. I get you. Whatever you're here for, and to draw out empathy, you cannot do it when your head is down in your phone. And I do blame social media. And I'm going to take a stand here because a lot of people are like, well, you can't blame social media for everything. No, you can't. But I'll tell you one thing. Since we have had more and more apps come out like Snapchat and, just anything like that our youth are using more and more of, the decline of our mental health has continued to go. And so I think that if we can be very intentional, and I talked about it in my post, I said, put your phone down. I said, accidentally forget it like I did. Leave it in your car, stick it in your purse. Notice, look up and look around, because when you look up and you look around, you notice things and things happen. You can strike up a conversation with a stranger. You can say, how are you doing this morning? The chit chat, we used to stand in line, Carey, whether it was at the grocery store or, to get our car fixed or anything.
Yeah, the airplane.
We'd have a conversation with the person behind us. No one does that anymore.
Right.
No one does that because their heads are down. And, if I want to quote statistics on loneliness, Carey, which I hate because they're terrible, 65%, that's a lot, 65% of Gen Z, and Gen Z would be between the ages of, born between 1996, 97 to 2013. So Gen Z, 65% of them report themselves as feeling lonely sometimes or all the time. 65% of them, 65% of them. But 80% of that same group say they would rather leave home without their wallet than without their phone, like I did this morning.
Right.
So we have created the most digitally connected, loneliest generation ever.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do about it, Carey? You know, we're waiting for these government programs to rescue our mental health crisis. It's not coming.
Right.
And it's not ever going to come because it's not meant to come that way. It's meant to come through you, through me, through these conversations, and through connecting. So, you know, that is just, it's going to be my mantra until the day I die, that, you know, connection is protection and we need to get out and start talking to each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's, you know, a little bit of our situation right now.
Yeah. And how it impacts our mental health. You know, you touched just briefly on that. And again, I can understand this because I'm guilty of this myself. I travel a lot and I tend to, when I get on the plane, have my phone with me, my earplugs in, the whole thing.
Me too, Carey. Yep.
And I realized on my last flight that how much I was doing that. And there was a lovely couple sitting next to me. And so it was towards the end of the flight that I finally struck up a conversation and finds out we have a lot in common. It was lovely. And I thought, why didn't I talk to them earlier? Right. And if we kept going, you know, usually when people ask me about myself, I tell them, you know, I'm a speaker. I talk about vision and here's why. Or if they ask me, do you have a family? I end up telling them, you know, I'm a widow and here's what's happened. It's amazing to me how many people have been affected by similar things or some sort of major trauma in their life.
Absolutely.
Right. And we need to be talking more about that because I don't think people realize how much we all have a story.
Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story. And when you can go first, I always say, you know, be the one to go first.
Yeah.
You know, we work in the mental health space. So, you know, we need to role model this. When you can go first and you can share a little bit of your story. And I'm like you, Carey, whenever I'm out and about, people say, oh, what do you do for a living? And I always say, well, I'm a public speaker. You know, oh, well, what do you speak about? And then I say, well, I speak about mental health and men's mental health. And I speak about suicide prevention. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I lost my cousin.
Yeah.
Or I lost my, you know, and then it starts to unravel and it starts to come out. And that's when you connect. That's when you connect. I had a similar thing about a year ago. I took my car in to have it serviced and the dealership's pretty close to my house, about 15 minutes away. And I forgot my phone. So I was going to turn around and go back. And I thought, no, I'm not. You're going to practice what you preach here, Leslie. You're going to go there. You're going to look around. You're going to notice people. You're going to look around. You're going to talk to people. So I pull in, and the very first thing I notice in that dealership, Carey, is it's chaos that morning because there's construction going on. So there's orange construction cones and, you know, getting back in there and everybody's throwing their keys at the service desk like it's their fault, you know. And so I went in the lounge for about a half hour and they came to get me and tell me my car was ready. And I just touched the arm of the service manager and I know him. I've seen him in there. His name's Neil. And I said, hey, Neil, buddy. I said, don't let these people in here today run your day. I said, if the worst problem that they have is a little construction, give them my cell number. I'll be happy to tell them what a bad day really looks like. And, you know, he sort of looked at me, Carey, like, you know, what are you talking about, Leslie? And I said, you see, Neil, we lost our son 7 years ago to suicide. So, you know, I don't sweat the small stuff anymore.
Right.
And this construction is just small stuff. And he looked at me and he stopped and he said, me too, Leslie. I'm in your club. I lost my dad 10 years ago. It's coming up on the 10-year anniversary. We sat there and we talked about another 5 to 10 minutes. He told me his dad was a veteran. He'd been in Vietnam, came home with a lot of PTSD, never talked to anybody about it, never asked for help. Eventually, his dad took his life. So when I got ready to get back in my car, Neil said, can I give you a hug? And I said, you sure can, buddy. I gave him a big old hug and, you know, drove off on my day. Later on that evening, I get a text message or a DM in my LinkedIn, and it's from Neil's aunt. And she said, you don't know me, but I'm Neil's aunt. She said, he never, ever talks about his dad. He never tells anybody. So whatever you said today, I want to thank you because you made him feel comfortable. All I did was leave my phone at home, right? Look up and notice what was going around and had a conversation. And he ended up sharing his story. So those are the kind of things that can happen organically every day if we make an intentional hour to 2 hours, whatever it is, to put our phones down and look up and notice. And that's how I think that we can break through this loneliness crisis that we're having, because it's a bad situation, Carey.
Yeah. The phone thing is a big deal. And, I have grandsons now. And,
I know you do.
I think a lot about that, a lot about what they're seeing as far as how much digital, how much we're on our phones. And I'm grateful that my daughter and my son-in-law are very aware of that, and they make conscious efforts to leave the phone, somewhere else. I had this vision while you were talking, Leslie, of you and I making some T-shirts or some hats or some pins or something that says, "Ask me about my day." Right?
Absolutely.
Or, let's talk or something. Let's start
talk
some sort
to
of
strangers.
Right.
I said, I love to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
I'll go in the grocery store or Target or whatever it is, and I'll just walk around in there and start talking to people. And, people probably think, oh, who is this woman? But I'll really start, if they're looking at a shirt or something, I'll say, oh, that color would look great on you. And I just spark up a conversation. The other thing that I think is so important, if you frequent an establishment, say you go through and you get your coffee the same place a couple times a week or whatever it is, know your barista's name and use their name. And here's why. When you're having a bad morning or a bad day and someone comes through that line, they either recognize your voice through the speaker, they say your name. It calms you down. It makes you feel like, I feel seen. Yeah. I feel hurt. She knows me. She knows my name. And there's such a powerful thing when you can just mention someone's name. Anytime we go into a restaurant, and you can ask my husband, he'll tell you, anytime we go into a restaurant, the very first thing I do to the waiter or waitress, I say, what's your name? Sometimes they'll introduce themselves. They'll say, hi, I'm, so-and-so. But then when they come back and bring me my water, when they bring me my meal, I make sure I use their name when I thank them. And it's just so amazing how you can connect with people. And so I think there's these little things that we can do that really, really can break through the walls and knock down this loneliness crisis.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
we have to start doing it, because we're losing the ability to have conversation with each other. Gen Z, if conversations get too difficult or things get too hard, they just pull out their phone, Carey, and they just start looking down and they start scrolling, right?
Yeah.
So we need to set up times when they can have intentional conversations. And that's why, I tell all parents, I'm like, you need to have dedicated time every week. I don't care how busy you are, and I don't care how busy your son or daughter are, because in a blink, they're going to be gone. Right. In a blink, they're going to be off to college. They're going to be gone. You need to have an hour a week or more to just be with them one-on-one, no phones, no devices, and go for a walk, whatever it is, just check in with them, and because so many kids are going from, and parents are guilty of it, Carey, but so many kids are so overscheduled. They go from soccer to tennis to golf to, and the parents don't even see their own kids, and so we've got to get back to it, Carey. And it's not difficult, but it takes time and it takes intention. Yeah. And that's what we're missing.
And it takes, like you're saying, making this a real deal in your day.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
Stacking one thing after another thing after another thing. I learned a long time ago. This probably happened the most after my son passed, Leslie, where I am somebody who can spin a lot of plates and run with my hair on fire, right? But imagine. After my son passed, I no longer had the desire to do that or the energy. And so I've now learned to monitor my day. Like today is a very full day. I will record 4 or 5 of these podcasts back to back, but then I've left my entire evening open not to do anything because I know what my energy will be like.
Good for you, Carey. Good for you.
And so I think that's another thing we need to have people take a look at is, why are we doing so much on top of each other, not leaving any room for having these conversations, right?
It's so important.
Or being there for somebody if something's happened. If you do have a conversation and you find out, man, this person really needs my help right now, do you have the time to help them?
Yeah, exactly. And you hit the nail on the head, Carey. So many people, especially I want to say a lot of younger people, they're on social media and they're gathering the likes, they're gathering the followers, like who's going to like this post? I'm going to write it to get all these followers. The problem is those followers, you're not going to call in the middle of the night when you have a problem. Those followers are not going to be the one you're going to tell if you have a breakup of a relationship or something happens in your life. You really only need a couple core people, 2 to 3 really good, deep connections that can keep you moving forward. And we all need them. Everybody needs somebody. Yes. And so for us to ever, there's people that I see them on LinkedIn and I think, when do you sleep? They're going from event to event to event. And, I wonder, and you talk about, like tonight, your night is free. We have to replenish. And it's so important that we have time to, just whatever it is, whether you like to meditate, whether you like to go for walks, whatever you like to do, we have to get back to doing that. Yeah. And I think that when we're running from event to event to event, I think many times it's because we're afraid to be alone with our thoughts. Yes. But I think so many times when we can get quiet and we can really, really assess, our gratitude for the day. Gratitude journals, and people have been talking about them for years. I think it's important. I had a friend who sent me, Jen Marr, who I love on LinkedIn. She sent me a gratitude journal that's a line a day. You just write 1 line a day in there, just like what happened today. And it's so beautiful no matter how you do it. Before you go to bed at night, grab a notebook or anything and just write down 3 things that you were grateful for that day. Whether it was, like what you had for dinner or, whatever it was. And it's so important because gratitude, we know, rewires the brain. It's neuroplasticity. Yep. So you say it out loud over and over and over. I always do the 3-3 challenge when I go on military bases because I'm dealing with a lot of young men and young women who bring trauma in with them when they come to the military. So we go through a lot of, we talk about the prefrontal cortex and how it develops and how old you have to be before it's fully developed. But one of the things I do is a 3-3 challenge, and I make them put 3 people in their phone, and you have to let the people know so they accept those 3 people are going to be their go-tos. If they have a problem, midnight, 2:00 in the morning, they're going to call. They're going to take that call. They're going to be available for them. So they've got those 3 people. Then I make them put 3 things on their phone because they all have their phones. They're on their phones all the time. 3 things that they're grateful for. And I tell them, I say, it can be your dog. I don't care. It's yours. It's not mine, but it's yours. Right. So say those out loud every single day. Because and I said, you can change them up. You can add to them. You can take away, but keep 3. When you say those over and over and over, and if you're stressed, say you're going to go take a test you haven't studied for, you don't feel prepared, say those out loud because gratitude calms our nervous system. And, when we never think better when we're amped up. So when we can calm ourselves down a little bit and get to a place where we have some clarity of thought, then we're going to have a lot less, fortunately, a lot less suicide, because suicide in the military now is really bad. And this year, it's double the civilian rate. So, that's why I go on bases because, 79% of all suicides are male in our country. And I think that's underreported. So as long as that statistic, is running true in our country, I'm going to try to get out to as many bases as possible and speak. So, yeah.
That's amazing work that you're doing, Leslie. And I know that you have some really amazing exercises because you shared some of those on our previous podcast of what you walked them through and what has helped them. And you, like me, have had people come up to you saying, you know what, you literally saved my life today.
Yeah.
So you and I both know that this is, as hard it is for us to accept what has happened in our lives and the losses that we've had, that we can make an impact. And I just am so grateful that you and I have met, Leslie, and what you're doing. I hope you and I can get together in person sometime.
I would love it. You're in Arizona, so I'm going to get out there. Yeah.
Okay. Don't come now, girl, but
it's too hot. Yeah, I won't come. I'll wait till I'll come in the winter when it's a little bit cooler out there.
I think you shared some really great points defining what loneliness is, really, that we really need to be a lot more intentional with this little device and putting it down.
Oh,
and just leaving some space in our day to really connect with people. My mother-in-law was the most extroverted person on the planet, Leslie. She loved people. And her favorite thing was to visit. She just loved having a big circle of people in her living room, and we were just visiting. And I used to tease her a lot about that.
yeah.
But I think that's a dying art. And
Oh,
I think we need to bring that back.
I just said that this morning. I said, I don't know when we lost that, Carey. I'm not
Yeah.
sure at what point, somewhere along the way, we lost the ability, but it's getting worse by the day.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we, adults have to role model it. So, if you're trying to, talk to your kid about putting their phone down while you're checking your, Instagram or whatever it is,
Right.
we have to put our phones down first. We've got to role model what we're asking them to do.
Right.
And, I'm guilty of it. I use my phone a lot. I'm on LinkedIn a lot because it's how I get my business. And it's really how I can reach the most amount of people and talk to,
Right.
Get on these military bases and talk to these soldiers and these sailors. And I'm looking for the Marines, Carey. So that's my next goal. But when I think about loneliness, and I'm going to go back to it for just a minute because it's important to know, it's really, like Vivek Murthy says, Dr. Murthy says, it's like hunger or thirst. It's really when you feel lonely, it's your body telling you it's missing something that it needs for survival. We need people to survive. We're not meant to be isolated. No man is an island. We're not meant to be isolated. So I think it's really, really important that we talk about how we can get to each other, because sometimes when people are in the depths of despair, the depths of depression, you and I both know about, Carey, is it's hard to reach out. So we need to figure out a way to reach in. We've got to figure out how to way to reach in. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I want to talk about, if you have somebody in your life that you used to see, on a regular basis, a couple times a month, whatever it was, and you haven't seen them in a while, and you don't know why, I want you to pick up your phone when you listen to this podcast. I want you to pick up your phone. I want you to send them a text message or call them. Better yet, call them, because I think the power of the human voice, we never know, I leave a lot of voice messages for people because the power of a human voice, you have a way you can send a voice memo or a voice recording. Yes. And I sent one to a friend, and he's a fellow loss survivor like we are, Carey. He lost his son. And he said to me one day, he said, "Can I tell you I've saved every one of your voice messages?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "When I have a bad day, I just play them and I listen to your voice and it just calms me down." And I think that we forget sometimes people can't reach out. So we need to be really intentional about checking on our neighbors, checking on our friends, checking on our coworkers, making sure people, workplace wellness, that's a whole nother topic for another podcast.
Yeah.
But, we need to make sure that we are not just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to, how you doing? I'm doing fine." You can hide a lot of depression and anxiety behind a smile. My son sure did. My son sure did, Carey.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really, really important that and I'm trying to do 2 people a day. Sometimes I get to 3, but I try to do 2. I send text, I leave voice memos, and I just check on them. How are you doing? I haven't heard from you in a while. I miss seeing you. Let's get together for coffee if they're local. I'm a big coffee drinker, so I'll meet anybody out any day, anytime, anywhere for coffee.
All the baristas in town.
I do have my favorite places, but I think it's really important to have real live human connection.
Yeah.
It's the most healing thing that we can do for somebody.
I think as we wrap this up, I think that is a really great challenge for people today to start making that a goal, to reach out to, at least 2 or 3 people every day. I'm inspired by that, Leslie. I'm inspired by this podcast and what you're doing in the world, obviously making a big impact. And I'm just so grateful for our friendship and being a colleague in this mission. And I'm grateful also for those of you listening. I have a new community that I'm growing called Vision is Victory Academy, Viva. And we're loading masterclasses into that, if you're a member of it. And Leslie has put a really great masterclass in Viva as well to do deeper dive on suicide prevention, loneliness, and some of her exercises. So I'm grateful, Leslie. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's my honor to do that during the month of September. And, it's really, really important, Carey. And I know we're wrapping up here, but I want to say, that it doesn't matter. I talked a lot about Gen Z, but we can talk about seniors. Seniors have suicide too, and a lot of theirs is attributed to loneliness, to no one checking on them, to being by themselves, to losing a spouse. And, so loneliness hits all generations differently. Our generation, Carey. So, I will always, I love to walk. I walk my neighborhood over and over and over. Now, if I walk by and someone's walking their dog and they just say hello, that's fine. Yeah. But when I walk by somebody and they take the time to stop, talk to me for a few minutes, ask me how my work is going, what I've been doing, I talk to them about their family, it's a connection. So anytime you need, I always tell everyone, sometimes when we need something the most is when we pull away from it. So with loneliness, if you can somehow or other get outside of yourself, do something for someone else, get outside of your house, go somewhere. So simple. And it sounds so simple, but it can be so hard when you're really, really kind of spiraling down and spiraling in. Yes. But if you have anybody in your life that you haven't heard from in a while, I want to encourage you during the month of September. And I will say, in memory of my son, in memory of Carey's son and Carey's husband, please pick up the phone, call them, text them, set up a time to meet with them, and don't wait. You won't believe, not only will it be good for their mental health, but it'll be good for yours, because that social connection is what we all need, Carey. Yeah. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about, in September more.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm honored that we're sharing this and putting this challenge out in this month together on this podcast, Leslie. I thank you so much for what you're doing and for your time again, and for your contribution to Viva, your masterclass. I'm sure that people will want to go check that out. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me to be part of it, Carey. It's an honor.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. I want to encourage you to stay tuned and listen to my message at the end that will tell you a little bit more about Viva. But as we wrap up today, I just want to remind you all to keep looking up. Design the life you've always dreamed of with Viva, Vision is Victory Academy. Join us and discover how to transform your vision into victory. Whether you're seeking clarity, resilience, or a path to personal growth, Viva is here to guide you every step of the way. Don't wait for life to happen to you. Make it happen with Viva. Sign up today at visionisvictoryacademy.com and take the first steps towards a life of purpose and passion. Your future self will thank you.